It was a Friday night at Lawell Apoke, the luxury restaurant I had poured my heart and soul into building. The place buzzed with the clinking of crystal glasses, the murmur of expensive conversations, and the soft hum of live piano music drifting through the air. Servers glided across the polished marble floors like shadows, balancing trays laden with dishes that cost more than most people made in a week. The warm glow of chandeliers bathed the room in golden light, reflecting off the pristine glassware and the delicate floral arrangements adorning each table. And there I was, me, Zara Bennett, the owner of this establishment, wearing a black apron over my designer dress, serving tables because one of my wait staff had called in sick. I wasn't ashamed to roll up my sleeves when needed. After all, this restaurant was my dream. But tonight felt different. The energy in the room crackled with an undercurrent of tension as soon as he walked in, a man whose reputation preceded him. Idris Kole, billionaire tech mogul, strode through the entrance like he owned the place. His tailored navy suit screamed wealth, his Rolex gleamed under the chandeliers, and his smirk seemed permanently etched onto his face. He scanned the dining area with disdain before settling on me, holding out his menu without even looking at me properly. "This is your best table," he drawled, his voice dripping with condescension. "Even beggars would eat this food." The words hit me like a slap. My hands froze mid-motion as I adjusted his napkin. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. But no, the sneer curling his lips confirmed it. Every pair of eyes in the vicinity turned toward us, their gazes sharp and curious. Heat rushed to my cheeks, but not from embarrassment. No, this was something else entirely, anger simmering beneath the surface, threatening to boil over. Idris leaned back in his chair, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. "You know," he continued, louder now, "clearly enjoying the attention, if you can't afford decent staff, maybe you should reconsider running such a pretentious operation." His laugh echoed across the room, punctuated by scattered chuckles from his entourage seated beside him. My jaw tightened, but I forced myself to stay composed. This wasn't just about me. It was about every person who worked here, every late night I'd spent perfecting recipes, every sacrifice I had made to turn this dream into reality. I couldn't let him see how deeply his words cut. Not yet. Instead, I gave him a polite smile, though my knuckles whitened around the tray. "Would you care for some water while you decide on your orders, sir?" I asked, my tone smooth despite the fury bubbling within me. He waved me off dismissively, already engrossed in mocking another server nearby. As I stepped away, I caught glimpses of pitying looks from my team and judgmental stares from other patrons. Some whispered behind their menus. Others shook their heads. It stung, but only for a second, because deep down, I knew what came next would change everything. Tonight wasn't going to end with Idris Kole walking away unscathed. Oh no, tonight he was going to learn exactly who I am and why crossing me was the biggest mistake of his life. Let me take you back to earlier that day, long before Idris Kole sauntered into Lawell Apoke. It started like any other morning. Well, almost. The sun peeked through the blinds of my apartment, casting golden streaks across the hardwood floor. I woke up early, as usual, fueled by the kind of restless energy that comes with knowing you're responsible for something bigger than yourself. Today wasn't supposed to be special. Just another day at the helm of the restaurant I'd built from scratch. But fate has a funny way of rewriting plans. By 8:00 a.m., I was already at the restaurant, reviewing inventory lists and finalizing the prep schedule with Chefy Z. We were preparing for a busy weekend, and every detail mattered. The kitchen smelled of fresh herbs and simmering sauces, a comforting reminder of why I fell in love with this industry in the first place. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, lining the back wall of the kitchen, casting soft shadows on the stainless steel countertops as the staff bustled around, each person a cog in the well-oiled machine I'd spent years perfecting. My phone buzzed incessantly, emails from suppliers, texts from staff, reservation confirmations piling up. Yet amidst the chaos, there was a rhythm, a quiet satisfaction in seeing everything come together. But then came the call that changed everything. One of my servers, Lami, phoned in sick. She sounded miserable, her voice hoarse and strained. "Zara, I'm so sorry," she rasped. "I'll make it up to you, I promise." Normally, I'd have shrugged it off. These things happen. But today we were short-staffed as it was. Every server counted. So without hesitation, I told her to rest and assured her I'd cover her shift. After all, I'd waited tables myself during the early days of opening the restaurant. How hard could it be? What I didn't anticipate was how much the universe seemed determined to test me. By noon, disaster struck again. Our sous chef accidentally burned his hand while pulling a tray out of the oven. He was rushed to urgent care, leaving us short-handed in the kitchen too. Chef Ease shot me a look that said, "We'll manage," but I could see the stress lines forming around his eyes. And then, just as dinner service approached, the power flickered, not enough to shut us down, but enough to send everyone into a panic. The soft jazz playing through the overhead speakers stuttered, lights dimmed for a breathless moment, and the air conditioning hiccuped before humming back to life. That's when I realized tonight wasn't going to be easy. Still, I rolled up my sleeves, tied on an apron, and stepped into the fray. If anyone noticed their boss doubling as a waitress, they didn't say a word. Everyone was too busy scrambling to keep the ship afloat. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd worked tirelessly to build a business where I could step back and focus on strategy, yet here I was, juggling plates and refilling water glasses like I had years ago. And then Idris Kole walked in. In hindsight, maybe I should have seen it coming. Wealthy clients often visited Lawell Apoke, drawn by its reputation for excellence, but none of them carried themselves quite like Idris. From the moment he entered, he radiated entitlement, his presence commanding attention whether he wanted it or not. When he made that crack about beggars and our food, part of me wanted to snap right then and there to reveal who I really was and watch the smugness drain from his face. But I didn't. Instead, I swallowed my pride, reminded myself of the bigger picture, and kept moving. Because sometimes revenge isn't about lashing out in the heat of the moment. Sometimes it's about patience, about waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. And trust me, Idris Kole had no idea what was coming. As Idris settled deeper into his seat, his arrogance only grew thicker, suffocating the atmosphere around him. He gestured lazily to the waiter, approaching his table, barely sparing him a glance. "Bring me the most expensive bottle you have," he barked, his tone laced with derision, "though I doubt it'll be worth the price tag." His companions chuckled nervously, exchanging glances that spoke volumes about their discomfort. They were used to his antics, perhaps even encouraged them. But tonight something felt different. Maybe it was the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air, or perhaps it was the collective unease rippling through the room. I moved quietly between tables, my movements deliberate yet unobtrusive, ensuring each guest felt attended to without drawing undue attention to myself. But every time I passed Idris's table, his voice carried over the gentle hum of conversation, slicing through the ambience like a knife. Honestly, he scoffed to his entourage, loud enough for nearby diners to hear. This place is trying way too hard to impress people who don't belong here. His gaze swept dismissively over the room, lingering momentarily on me, as if daring me to react. Each insult landed like a punch to the gut, but I refused to let him see the cracks forming beneath my calm exterior. Instead, I focused on the warmth emanating from the other patrons, those who exchanged sympathetic smiles with me. Those who exchanged sympathetic smiles with me, their eyes soft with understanding. There was Mrs. Thompson, a regular who always ordered the lavender creme brulee, nodding subtly in solidarity, and Mr. Patel, who frequented the restaurant weekly, offering a small, encouraging smile as I refilled his glass. Their silent support bolstered my resolve, reminding me that this wasn't just my battle. It was theirs too. Yet, amidst the sea of empathetic faces, there were also those who recoiled, visibly uncomfortable with the spectacle unfolding before them. A young couple at a nearby table shifted awkwardly in their seats, clearly torn between enjoying their meal and confronting the growing tension. Others whispered behind raised menus, their expressions a mix of disapproval and reluctant fascination. The room had transformed into a stage, and Idris, unknowingly, was the villain of the piece. Every snide comment he made reverberated through the restaurant, amplifying the divide between those who stood with me and those who cowered under his shadow. But with each barb, my determination hardened. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every person who believed in the vision I had created, for every employee who worked tirelessly to bring that vision to life. And as Idris continued his tirade, oblivious to the storm brewing within me, I knew the moment of reckoning was drawing near. It happened faster than I expected. Idris had been sipping his wine. Yes, the outrageously expensive bottle he demanded when he leaned back in his chair, surveying the room with that same insufferable smirk. "You know," he announced loudly, swirling the glass like he was auditioning for a luxury commercial. "Places like this thrive on fooling people into thinking mediocrity is sophistication." His laughter rang out, sharp and grating, cutting through the hushed murmurs of the dining room. That's when I decided it was time. I approached his table, my steps steady and deliberate, the tray in my hands perfectly balanced, despite the storm raging inside me. "Is everything to your liking, Mr. Kole?" I asked, my voice calm but carrying an edge that silenced the entire room. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Forks paused halfway to mouths, and all eyes turned toward us. Even Idris looked momentarily taken aback by the sudden shift in energy. "Actually," I continued, setting the tray down with a soft clink, "there's something I'd like to share with you." I reached into the pocket of my apron and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook, the same one I used to jot down daily operations, supplier notes, and staff schedules. The edges were slightly worn, a testament to years of meticulous record keeping. Flipping it open, I slid it across the table toward him. "This is my restaurant," I said, my tone firm and unwavering, "and these are the financial records proving it." His smirk faltered, replaced by confusion. "What are you talking about?" he snapped, though his voice lacked its earlier bravado. "I'm Zara Bennett," I replied, letting the name hang in the air like a challenge, "owner of Lawell Apoke. You've spent the last 20 minutes insulting not just me but every single person working here tonight, including yourself apparently, since you're dining in what you seem to think is a mediocre establishment." The room erupted into gasps and murmurs. Idris's face flushed red, his jaw tightening as he struggled to process the situation. The flickering candlelight on the table cast sharp shadows across his features, highlighting the cracks in his once impenetrable composure. This is ridiculous," he stammered, glancing around for support from his entourage. But they avoided his gaze, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. "Oh, it gets better," I said, leaning slightly forward, my voice dropping to a level that demanded absolute attention. "You see, Mr. Kole, I believe in treating people with respect, even those who might not deserve it. So, instead of throwing you out right now, which I could easily do, I'm going to offer you a choice. You can either apologize sincerely to everyone here and leave quietly, or" I paused, letting the tension stretch taut like a bowstring, "or I'll personally ensure that your little outburst becomes headline news tomorrow morning." Trust me, billionaires don't fare well in public opinion polls when they're caught mocking hardworking individuals. For a moment, the only sound was the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Even the pianist had paused, hands hovering uncertainly above the keys. Then Idris stood abruptly, knocking over his chair in his haste. "Fine," he muttered, his voice low and venomous. "I apologize." He glanced around the room, his apology forced but audible to everyone. Satisfied, I nodded curtly. "Good. Now please enjoy the rest of your evening elsewhere." As he stormed out, his entourage trailing behind him like chastised puppies, the room erupted into applause. Patrons rose to their feet, cheering and whistling, while my staff gathered around me, their faces glowing with pride. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about putting Idris in his place. It was about standing up for something greater than myself, and it felt incredible. The aftermath of Idris Kole's humiliation spread like wildfire. Within hours, whispers turned into stories, and stories morphed into legends. Social media lit up with posts from patrons who had witnessed the showdown firsthand, tagging Lawell Apoke and sharing videos of the climactic moment. Hashtags like "Respect Your Server" and "Billionaires Behaving Badly" trended overnight, catapulting my restaurant and me into the spotlight. Journalists clamored for interviews, bloggers dissected every detail, and local news anchors hailed me as a hero for standing up to elitism. But beyond the viral fame and media frenzy, the real impact unfolded in quieter, more profound ways. The following week, I received dozens of letters and emails from strangers, wait staff, chefs, bartenders, and hospitality workers across the country who thanked me for giving them hope. One message stood out. A young waitress wrote about how she'd been bullied by a customer earlier that year and felt powerless to respond. "Seeing you stand up to someone like Idris Kole made me realize I deserve respect too," she wrote. "Thank you for showing me that strength isn't about yelling louder. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. Even when it's hard." Inside the restaurant, the transformation was equally palpable. My team walked taller, their confidence buoyed by the knowledge that they were valued and protected. During our next staff meeting, Lamy, the server whose absence had thrust me into waitressing duty, teared up as she recounted how proud she was to work somewhere that prioritized dignity over profit. "You didn't just defend us," she said, her voice trembling. "You reminded us why we chose this job in the first place, to create joy, not endure abuse." Even the regular patrons noticed the shift. Mrs. Thompson, ever the observant diner, remarked during her next visit, "There's a new energy here. It's like the whole place breathes easier now." She wasn't wrong. The atmosphere at Lawell Apoke had transformed, infused with a sense of unity and purpose that went far beyond exceptional cuisine or impeccable service. People weren't just coming for the food. They were coming for the story, for the promise of being part of something meaningful. For me, the experience became a turning point. It wasn't just about vindication, it was about validation. Standing up to Idris reinforced my belief in the importance of kindness, empathy, and integrity, not just as ideals, but as non-negotiable principles. I began implementing changes at the restaurant, starting with mandatory training sessions on conflict resolution and workplace respect. I also introduced a guest code of conduct policy, making it clear that disrespect would not be tolerated under any circumstances. To my surprise, these measures didn't deter customers. They attracted even more. Word of mouth praise brought in new faces, eager to support a business rooted in values rather than vanity. And then there was Idris himself. Though he vanished from public view after the incident, rumors swirled about his plummeting reputation among peers and investors. A few weeks later, I received an envelope containing a handwritten note in neat, precise handwriting. It read, "You were right. Respect matters. Thank you for teaching me that lesson." No signature, but I didn't need one. Whether genuine or coerced by PR advisors, the acknowledgement meant something. Redemption, I realized, isn't always loud or dramatic. It's often found in small, quiet moments of accountability. Looking back, I understood that the confrontation wasn't just about me versus Idris. It was about choosing courage over complacency, humanity over hierarchy. It reminded me why I started this journey in the first place, to build a space where everyone, from the dishwasher to the diner, felt seen, heard, and valued. And in doing so, I discovered that true success isn't measured in accolades or profits. It's measured in the lives you touch along the way. Reflecting on that unforgettable night, I realized how profoundly it reshaped not just my perspective, but also the very essence of Lawell Apoke. Each memory serves as a poignant reminder of the delicate balance between power and humility, wealth and humanity. That evening, amidst the glittering chandeliers and the murmurs of astonished diners, I learned that true strength lies not in domination, but in the quiet, steadfast commitment to uphold dignity for oneself and for others. Idris Kole's mockery was a mirror reflecting societal flaws, exposing the stark disparity between privilege and empathy. It underscored a truth I hold dear. Respect is not a privilege to be earned, but a fundamental right inherent to every individual, regardless of their station in life. The soft hum of the restaurant, punctuated by the clink of glasses and murmured conversations, seemed almost ironic in the wake of such a harsh lesson. This ordeal illuminated the critical role of kindness in leadership. Managing Lawell Apoke is no longer merely about curating exquisite dining experiences. It's about fostering an environment where every team member feels empowered and respected. Implementing policies that champion respect and fairness has cultivated a culture of mutual appreciation and collaboration. These changes resonate deeply with our patrons, who increasingly choose us not just for our culinary excellence, but for our ethos. This alignment of values enhances the dining experience, transforming meals into meaningful interactions imbued with warmth and authenticity. The restaurant, once merely a symbol of ambition, now stands as a beacon of inclusivity and mutual respect. Moreover, the incident with Idris taught me invaluable lessons about personal growth and resilience. Facing adversity head on, especially when it challenges one's identity and values, demands courage and conviction. It's about embracing vulnerability, allowing oneself to feel the sting of injustice, and channeling that emotion into constructive action. This transformative experience has fortified my resolve, instilling a relentless drive to advocate for fairness and equality within my sphere of influence. It has also deepened my understanding of redemption and forgiveness, recognizing that everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow from their mistakes. The quiet moments after the confrontation, when the last patrons had left and the lights dimmed, were filled with introspection, a reminder that strength often finds its roots in stillness. The lesson here is clear: respect is a right, not a privilege, and true strength lies in standing up for yourself and others with dignity and compassion. Idris Kole's downfall serves as a reminder that arrogance and entitlement will always fall short against integrity and resilience. When we choose kindness and fairness, we create spaces where everyone feels valued and empowered. Thank you for watching my channel. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to check out more inspiring and thought-provoking videos. See you in the next one. Idris Karam stepped out of his expensive black Mercedes car, the gleam of its polished surface reflecting the city lights. He adjusted his tailored suit, a move he usually did before going into one of his multi-billion naira business meetings, a habit he had formed over years of high-stakes negotiations. As he reached for his phone to check the time, something across the street caught his attention, pulling him out of his routine. Across the street was a woman, a beggar with unkempt hair and tattered clothes on the roadside, her frail frame barely visible under the layers of dirt and hardship. Something about this woman seemed familiar. Idris squinted his eyes, trying to remember where he knew her from, his heart pounding unexpectedly in his chest. Suddenly, the woman looked up. Their eyes met across the busy A street, and the noise of the bustling city seemed to fade into the background. In that instant, Idris's world spun out of control. Those eyes. I would know them anywhere, he whispered to himself, his breath hitching slightly. Could this be Layla? He thought to himself, a cold shiver running down his spine. Layla's eyes widened in shock as she recognized Idris. She got up hastily, her frail body moving with unexpected speed, and disappeared into the crowd, her bare feet barely making a sound on the pavement. Idris stood there, frozen in disbelief, his fingers tightening around the phone in his hand. He walked into the office and sat, staring at the sky through his glass office. His mind kept replaying that moment on the street, the way Layla had looked at him before vanishing. At 40, Idris Karam was very well accomplished. He had built a multi-billion naira tech empire from scratch, his determination and strategic mind making him one of the most influential men in the country. His face was on every famous business magazine in the country. His name was mentioned in every boardroom. He had everything he ever wanted, but seeing Layla homeless and destitute had shaken him to his core. The weight of his success suddenly felt heavier than ever. How did this happen to Layla? She was very brilliant and very ambitious, he thought to himself, his fingers tapping against his desk absent-mindedly. He remembered how they used to talk about all their big dreams of changing the country together, sitting under the old mango tree in his childhood home. They had both been dreamers once, full of hope and determination. What happened with Layla? He wondered, frustration and guilt creeping into his thoughts. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. His receptionist at his company, Lola, informed him that his next appointment was ready. Idris told her to cancel all his appointments for the day, something he had never done before. Lola looked surprised but nodded. In the 5 years she had worked for him, Idris had never cancelled any meeting, not even during his worst flu or when he lost a major deal. Idris grabbed his coat and walked out. He needed to find Layla. I must know what happened to Layla, he said to himself, his voice firm with determination. He couldn't bear the thought of Layla being out there alone, struggling all by herself. He walked into the busy street and began scanning for her, the sounds of honking cars and street vendors barely registering in his mind. As he moved past a lot of people, their childhood memories together kept coming up in his mind like flashes of a forgotten dream. How did I forget Layla? How did I let her out of my sight? How did I not know she was going through a hard time? Idris beat himself up with these questions. He felt very guilty because Layla was the one person that believed in Idris's dreams when they were younger. Each time he told people about his wild dream of building a tech empire, they used to laugh at him, reminding him that he was just a village boy looking for things that were beyond him. But Layla never laughed. She had always encouraged him, telling him he was meant for greatness. Idris had become so focused on his own success in building an empire that he forgot about the one person that was so important to him. Tears filled up in his eyes, but he quickly blinked them away. He really wanted to find his childhood love so he could fix everything that went wrong. When they were growing up, Layla's home life was not good at all. Her parents fought and argued every day, the walls of her home echoing with their endless battles. Layla would run to Idris's house to get away from the chaos in her home. There, they would sit and dream of building a better life and a better future together, sharing whispered dreams under the dim glow of a kerosene lamp. But their high school graduation day was the last time he ever saw her. After high school, Idris had a full scholarship to study abroad, while Layla was not so lucky. She had admission to the university, but her parents didn't have the money to send her to school. Idris was sad that he had lost touch with the one person that believed in him and encouraged him. He was determined to find Layla and make up for all the suffering she had gone through. Idris continued his search through the city streets, hoping to find the woman who had once been his whole world. When he was abroad, he wrote letters to Layla often, but Layla was not writing back as often. Her emails were short, as if Idris was bothering her. He had assumed she was just busy. Now, he wondered if she had been struggling even back then. After university, Idris graduated top of his class and came back to Nigeria to establish his tech company. He became very successful, and that kept him too busy to remember anything or anyone. Meanwhile, Layla's life had taken a drastically different turn. After high school, unable to afford university, she had taken a job at a local buka to help support her mother, who was sick. Her dreams of changing the world were slowly replaced by the harsh realities of low-wage work and mounting medical bills. The ambition in her eyes had been dimmed by struggle. From the shadows, Layla watched Idris's rise from afar. She was so happy for him, but a small part of her had hoped she would be by his side when he achieved it. As her mother's condition worsened, Layla's life became a cycle of work, hospital visits, and sleepless nights. She took on multiple other jobs so she could afford all the tested medications that were prescribed to her mother. There was no time for dreams. Survival became her only focus. When her mother finally passed away, Layla was left with a lot of debt. She sold everything they had and nothing was left. She couldn't even pay for the small bedroom they had rented. With so much frustration, she gave up on life and found herself on the streets of Lagos. As Idris walked the streets of Lagos searching for Layla, he had no idea of the hardship she had endured. All he knew was that he had to find her. The guilt of his own success while Layla was homeless weighed heavily on him. He spent hours searching the areas where he'd seen her, showing her picture to other people in that area. Someone recognized the picture and directed Idris to where he could find Layla. The streets here were dirty, buildings crumbling, homeless people laying all around the ground, their faces plastered with the same desperation he had seen in Layla's eyes. Idris truly began to understand the magnitude of what had happened to Layla. This wasn't just a temporary setback. This was a failure in the system. This reminded him how lucky he had been and how easy it is for anyone to become poor and destitute. As he stood there, feeling the harsh reality of life on the streets, littered with homeless people and a lot of suffering, Idris felt a profound shift. His own success, wealth, and power meant nothing if he could not use it to help those who need it. Idris was determined to find Layla, no matter how long it took him. As nightfall came, he was so tired of walking around. He refused to go home. He found a bench near a dimly lit alley and laid there to rest, the cold seeping into his bones as he stared up at the night sky. As he sat up in the morning, something shocking happened. As he looked up into a crowd of homeless people, he saw Layla. Her figure was slightly hunched, her eyes darting nervously. He got up, grabbed his coat, and ran towards her, calling her name, his voice cutting through the morning air. Layla heard her name and turned around to see Idris. As soon as she saw him, she took off running. She ran into a crowd of morning commuters, her tattered clothes blending with the moving figures. Idris was not going to allow Layla to get away from him anymore. He pushed past the commuters and chased down Layla while screaming for her to wait. He was determined to find her and help. He ran until he caught up to her. He grabbed her blouse, and they both fell on the ground, the impact knocking the breath out of them. "I just want to talk to you, Layla. Please stop running." He breathed, heavy and fast, his grip loosening slightly. Layla laughed bitterly. Oh, you want to help me, like you helped me all those years ago. Where were you when I suffered? Where were you when my mom died? Where were you when I became homeless? She asked, her voice rising with each word. The accusation hit Idris like a physical blow, his chest tightening with regret. I didn't know, Layla, Idris replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Oh, you didn't know because you didn't care. You were busy becoming a billionaire, she responded very harshly, crossing her arms as she glared at him. Idris held her shoulders and looked into her eyes. That's not true, Layla. I never forgot about you. I tried to stay in touch, but you never replied to my letters. I searched for you when I returned, but I had no idea where to look. Idris felt tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, Layla. I'm so sorry. But please, let me make it right. Let me help you now. I don't want your help you now. I don't want your help, Idris. I don't want your guilt or your pity. Just leave me alone. Go back to your perfect life and forget about me because that is what you're good at, Layla said, her voice breaking slightly. She turned around and walked away, leaving Idris standing there, devastated. But Idris was not one to give up easily. Layla's words had hurt him deeply, but they also fueled his determination. He didn't care if she wanted his help or not, he was going to help her. He began to look for ways he could help Layla and all the other homeless people in that area. For the first time in years, Idris felt a sense of purpose beyond growing his company and increasing his wealth. He got in touch with some builders and paid them to build a homeless shelter where homeless people could sleep, eat, and have job training. He made sure it was in the same area where he had found Layla. As he worked, Idris kept an eye out for Layla. Sometimes he would see her begging around his office, and it pained him to see how much she had changed. After the building was commissioned, Idris sent his workers to invite all the homeless people in Layla's area. They all came in to get some food, a place to sleep, and registered to be trained in different skills. Layla came with them, not knowing that Idris had built that because of her. Layla had registered to train in tech. She was very good at it, her sharp mind quickly grasping the concepts. 6 months later, she was great at programming and won a spot to intern in Idris's company. Idris kept an eye on her, but didn't approach her so she wouldn't run away and reject the help. One day, while working in the office, he overheard people talking about how Idris had built the homeless shelter and helped a lot of people from the streets. Layla was shocked to hear this about Idris. She had always thought having money had changed him into a monster, but she was wrong about him. Layla walked into Idris's office to confront him. "Did you build a shelter and help people because of your guilt?" she asked harshly, her arms crossed as she stared him down. "No, Layla, I didn't only do it for you. I did it for everyone," Idris said, his gaze steady. "So why did you decide to do this now, after all these years?" she asked, her voice quieter this time. "Because when I came to look for you, for the first time in my life, I saw how many people were suffering, and I realized how lucky I have been. I needed to use my wealth and resources to solve problems for other people, not only to make myself rich," he answered sincerely. Layla wanted to stay angry and hold on to bitterness, but looking into Idris's eyes, she saw genuine remorse. She saw the boy she had once loved, the one who had believed in her all those years ago. "I don't know if I can forgive you," Layla said softly. I know, Idris responded. I don't expect you to forgive me today or ever. But please, let me try to make things right. Not just for you, but for everyone in your situation. She informed him that she wasn't the